Good day, everyone. This is Iris Abaile, together with my group mates, Miss Avistano, Miss Aligado, and Mr. Altobar. Our topic for today is all about Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis theory of personality. According to Sigmund Freud, the mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk water. So each person has his own peculiarities, and as a result of these peculiarities, he shows specific behavior in different situations. This behavior is intimately related to his personality. In fact, this behavior is the mirror of personality, but some have more impressive personality, some have less. It is wrong to say that certain person has no personality. This statement only means that he does not possess an impressive personality. Our personality means us, the whole person and everything about us. Our face, hair, teeth, eye, our way of walking, standing, talking, mannerism, character, habits, thinking, feeling, attitudes, interests, and everything else about us. Etymologically, the term personality has been derived from the Latin word persona. At first, this word was used for the mask worn by the actors to change their appearance. Since then, the term personality has been used to depict outward appearance or external behavior. Psychologically speaking, personality is all about a person is. It is the totality of one's behavior towards oneself as well as others. It includes everything about a person, his physical, emotional, social, mental, and spiritual makeup. It is all that a person has about him. So there are 5 natures of personality. So the first one is personality is something unique and specific. So every one of us is a unique pattern in ourselves. No two individuals, not even identical twins, behave the same way over any period of time. Every one of us has specific characteristics for making adjustments. So the second nature of personality is Personality exhibits self-consciousness as one of its main characteristics. So the next one is personality is not static. It is dynamic and ever-changing. So as a result, one has to bring a modification and change in one's personality patterns, and it makes the nature of personality dynamic instead of static one. So the fourth one is every personality is the product of heredity and environment. So both contribute significantly towards the development of child's personality. So the last nature of personality is learning and acquisition of experiences contributes towards growth and development of personality. Every personality is the end product of this process of learning and acquisition. So therefore, personality draws out a beautiful portrait of an individual's totality. It may be understood to mean as the sum total of one's way of behaving towards oneself and others as well. It also predicts one's nature of behavior as how one will behave in a particular situation and one's pattern of adjustment to the ever-changing forces of nature. So, let us now move on to Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality. So, psychoanalysis as a system or school of psychology was the brainchild of Sigmund Freud, a Viennese physician. So, this school put forward altogether different views, quite contrary to structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism, or gestaltism to explain human behavior. Psychoanalysis now represents a school of psychology which, consciously enough, had its origin in the medical practice of Freud rather than in any previous school of psychology. So, the term psychoanalysis has two accepted meanings. The first one is it means a method of treatment designed by Freud for the cure of certain of nervous disorders through a technique for investigating deep layers of the mind. Second is it represents a system or school of psychology which has grown and has crystallized itself into a series of important and systematized theories as a result of using psychoanalytical therapy.
So there are three components of personality. So first is ID or pleasure centered, second is ego or reality centered, and third is superego or related to ego ideal or conscience. So first let's have the ID. So it derived from the Latin word eat. So it contains life instinct like sex, hunger, thirst, and etc. And death instinct like aggressive and destructive tendencies. So, libido or sexual energy that fuels the entire personality needed for everyday life. Pleasure principle seeks immediate gratification of impulses regardless of consequences. Pleasure to reduction in tension. So, tension increases if we don't release energy from impulses. So, the ID is the unorganized part of the personality structure that contains a human basic instinctual drive. It is the source of our bodily needs, desires, and impulses, particularly our sexual and aggressive. So ID is the most primitive of the three structures, is concerned with instant gratification of basic physical needs and urges. It operates entirely unconsciously or outside of conscious thought. So the example of this is if your ID walked past a stranger eating ice cream, it would mostly likely take the ice cream for itself. It doesn't know or care that it is rude to take something belonging to someone else. It would care only that you wanted the ice cream. So the second one is the ego. So it derived from the Latin word I. So it is logical or rational. So it is a executive of personality, determines where, when, and how impulses are expressed. The goal is to satisfy the ID in ways that are socially and morally acceptable. Next is reality principle is tendency to delay gratifications of impulses until they can be expressed in socially and morally acceptable ways. So the ego is the organized part of the personality structure that includes defensive, perpetual intellectual, cognitive, and executive functions. Sigmund Freud used the word ego to mean a sense of self, but later revised it to mean a set of psychic function such as judgment with time, space, and ego. So the ego is in construct to the instinctual ID and the moral superego. So the ego is the rational, pragmatic part of our personality. So it is less primitive than ID. So the next one is the superego. So it derive a German word Obereich meaning over I or I above. So it contains moral values, not rational. So the superego they are consists of two parts, which is the conscious and ego ideal. So conscious is the memories of behavior that have been punished. If we repeat these actions, we feel guilty. So, ego ideal is the memories of behaviors for which we have been praised or rewarded. Repeating them give us feelings of pride. So, the superego works in contradiction to ID. The superego strives to act in a socially appropriate manner, whereas the ID just wants instant self gratification. The superego controls our sense of right and wrong and guilt. It helps us fit into society, getting us to act in socially acceptable ways. So the superego is concerned with social rules and morals, similar to what many people call their conscience or their moral compass. It developed as a child learned what their culture considered right and wrong. So the example of superego, if your superego walked past the same stranger, it would not take their ice cream because it would know that would be rude. However, if you both your ID and your superego were involved and your ID was strong enough to override your superego's concern, you would still take the ice cream, but afterward you would mostly likely feel guilt and shame over your action.
Aside from the three components of personality, there are five psychosexual stages of development. Number one is the oral stage. It is the mouth sucking or swallowing, and etc. The number two is the anal stage, the anus withholding or expelling feces. And the number three is the phallic, the penis or clitoris masturbation. The number four is the latent stage, little or no sexual motivation present. And the number five is the genital stage, the penis or the vagina, sexual intercourse. So let's start in the oral stage. The oral stage is 0 to 18 months, where pleasure is centered. This is when infants will be found putting anything into their mouth, including their thumb. So, in the first stage of psychosexual development, the libido is centered in a baby's mouth. During the oral stages, the baby gets much satisfaction from putting all sorts of things in its mouth to satisfy the libido and thus its ID demands, which at this stage in life are oral or mouth oriented, such as sucking, biting, and breastfeeding. Freud said oral stimulation could lead to an oral fixation in later life. We see oral personalities all around us, such as smokers, nail biters, finger clawers, and thumb suckers. Oral personalities engage in such oral behaviors, particularly when under stress. The second stage is the anal stage, 18 to 36 months, which occurs in the second year of life. During this stage, the anus becomes the focus of sexual gratification. This occurs because the child finds sexual pleasure in the sensations that come with having or withholding bowel movements. During the anal stage of psychosexual development, the libido becomes focused on the anus, and the child derives great pleasure for defecating. The child is now fully aware that they are a person in their own right and that their wishes can bring them into conflict with the demands of the outside world or their ego has developed. Freud believed that this type of conflict tends to come to a head in potty training. During the anal stage of psychosexual development, the libido becomes focused in the anus, and the child derives great pleasure from defecating. The child is now fully aware that they are a person in their own right and that their wishes can bring them into conflict with the demands of the outside world, and their ego has developed. Example: the child has to learn to control their bodily needs. Developing this control leads to a sense of accomplishments and independence. Freud believed that this type of conflict tends to come to a head in potty training, in which adults impose restrictions on when and where the child can defecate. The nature of this first conflict with authority can determine the child's future relationship with all forms of authority. Early or harsh potty training can lead to the child becoming an anal retentive personality who hates mess, is obsessively tidy, punctual, and respectful of authority. They can be stubborn and tight-fisted with their cash and possessions. This is all related to pleasure got from holding onto their faces when toddlers, and their moms then insisting that they get rid of it by placing them on the potty until they perform. Number 3 is the phallic stage, 3 to 6 years, stage where the child learns that there is difference between males and females. The phallic stage is the third stage of psychosexual development, spanning the ages of 3 to 6 years, wherein the infant's libido, or desire, centers upon their genitalia as the erogenous zone. The child becomes aware of anatomical sex differences, which sets in motion the conflict between erotic attractions, resentment, rivalry, jealousy, and fear, which Freud called the Oedipus complex in boys.
Now, let's move on to the next stage of psychosexual development. This is a fourth stage called the latency stage. So, in this stage, starts from 6 years in the case of girls and 7 to 8 years in the case of boys and extends up to the onset of puberty. At this stage, libido interests are suppressed and are directed into other areas such as intellectual pursuits and social interactions. This stage is important in the development of social and communication skills and self confidence. So, in this stage, no fixation occurs as the child's energy is focused on peer activities and personal mastery of learning and physical skills. Stage occurred is because during this stage, before latency, the child resolves first the Oedipus or electric complex. What do we mean when we say Oedipus or electric complex? So Sigmund Freud developed the concept of Oedipus complex to describe a child's sexual desire for the parent of the opposite sex and a sense of rivalry with the parent of the same sex. Then later, Carl Jung introduced the Electra complex, which is the female equivalent of Oedipus complex. However, we often use Oedipus complex as a general term to describe both Oedipus and Electra complexes. Next is the fifth stage, which is called the genital stage. So, puberty is the starting point of the genital stage. So, the adolescent boy and girl now feels a strange feeling of strong sensation in the genitals and attraction towards the members of the opposition sex. At this stage, they may feel pleasure by self-stimulating of the genitals, may fall in love with their own self by taking interest in beautifying and adoring their bodies, and may be drawn quite close to members of opposite sex. So fixation in this stage leads to frigidity, impotence, and unsatisfactory relationships. The study of Freud's psychoanalysis has led to different realizations in each field of our development, especially in our human learning. And although Freud's work in the study of human behavior is compared with the discovery of Copernicus, that the Earth is not yet the center of the universe, or with the Darwin's theory of evolution, yet it came for several severe criticism during and after his lifetime. So even if the psychoanalysis that were psychoanalytic theory that was being proposed by Freud, it had been experienced many criticisms as well. So, first criticism of his theory is that his system reflects his medical background, and consequently, he has tried to emphasize man only as a biological and not as a cultural and another one is that Freud, in his study of human behavior, has not been sufficiently scientific and objective. Many times he has concluded and generalized on the basis of a single study or mental illness, and for that reason, many of his views and findings lack general applicability. So, for example, his theory of Oedipus and Electra complexes, emphasizing hatred for the parent of same sex and love for the parent of opposite sex, have not been found universally true. Emphasizing hatred for the parent of same sex and love for the parent of opposite sex have not been found universally true. And the last known criticism of his theory is that Freud laid too much emphasis on the role of early childhood experiences in the determination of the course of one's life, as well as one's overall personality. So, although these cannot be ignored, what happens afterwards should also not be underestimated. If the views propagated by Freud are to be accepted blindly, then we are reduced to mere puppets in the hands of our early childhood traumatic experiences, the memory of which is stored in our unconscious mind. However, as may be experimentally verified, this is not true. Our personality makeup or behavior is not determined only by what happens with us in our childhood, but also by the events or circumstances that we face in our adult life. So, in this period, although as happens with new ideology set against the system advocated by Freud, it has also been proven had a beneficial implication to education. And if even if his theories are being criticized as well, but it has also proven to be uh, on the credit has many things, sorry, in the credit side. So its contribution to education can be some of psychology in general, and educational psychology in particular was expanded with the introduction of the system of psychoanalysis that was being coined by Sigmund Freud himself. So psychoanalysis also has changed the conception of education and widened its aim. Education is no longer considered as restraint to be achieved by external regulatory means such as punishment and rewards. So, the aim of education is no longer the formal training of the intellect. So, psychoanalysis has helped widen this aim by including in it the development of the whole personality. Since, you know, we all know that psychoanalysis studies and deals with the unconscious and subconscious mind of the human person, as well as different facts about his personality. So, psychoanalysis also has laid stress on certain psychological incentives or means in education, which have been recognized by all progressive educationists all the world over. So, this includes affection or love, use of instincts, their utilization in various activities, and the child's own will to interest, which is the educator's most powerful ally. So, another one is that psychoanalysis has also explained why the art of teaching is sometimes resisted by the child. And in spite of his natural thirst for knowledge. So, this resistance in extreme cases takes the shape of disobedience and refusal to cooperate with the teacher. So, the child resists because the act of teaching is consciously or unconsciously taken as constituting a criticism. I know we're both familiar to that, right? So the act of teaching is performed in such a way that it applies the child's previous ignorance in an effort to remedy or to improve this one's the child's self-love and stimulates his aggression, hence the opposition of teaching but by some of children in particular. So, psychoanalysis also brings out the importance of proper environment for the education of children. So, by studying psychoanalysis, the environment in the school and the home should be such as to reduce the chances of repression and increases the chances of sublimation or suffers from conflicts. So, the conflict is between the unconscious needs and the demands of reality. So, psychoanalysis has shown us that the environmental causes, such as the broken home, poor economic conditions, bad neighborhood, inadequate school programs, lack of proper recreational facilities, etc., are not important in themselves, although they play an important part in the adjustment of the individual. So, they are important in as much as they affect the emotional forces in the individual. So they destroy the basis of emotional security, which is the difference or the bulwark against maladjustment. So not only psychoanalysis emphasize the importance of emotions in the life and education of children, but they have also thrown light or has shown us the problems of emotional development from the infancy up to the stage of adulthood. So, this knowledge enables parents and teachers to adopt the right attitude to children when at home or in school. So, you see there, thus, we see that the teacher can really help the school and the pupils a great deal if he or she knows the theory of psychoanalysis. Hence, um, applying Sigmund Freud's theory to your own pedagogy of teaching, you're going to reflect it on your own style. It will greatly help a lot since it will really make you understand more about the development or the what is really the what's going on inside a child's mind, so that you could adjust your teaching style as well. So the knowledge of psychoanalysis enables the teacher to understand, yes, the child better. So, according to Adams of modern development in educational practices, is an essential part of the pupil's nature and must be known in a general way if the pupil is to be intelligently handled. So, equipped with the psychoanalytical knowledge, a teacher, a future educator can detect certain unusual behavior and abnormalities and then hand over the case to specialists for proper treatment. So that is what our role as a future teacher, as a future educator should really possess. So thus the knowledge of this method or this theory and its underlying principles will give us or will give a teacher the required knowledge and skill in obtaining the best educational results. So there you have it, guys. There you have it, folks. That is all about the psychoanalytic theory of Sigmund Freud. I hope that you learned a lot from our discussion and you had learned the significance and as well as the important principles and functions of this theory and um, how it would help us understand more about our role as a teacher to our students. So I hope that we made that part clear, and I hope that we somehow delivered a great knowledge or learning experience to you guys as well. So, on behalf of our group, thank you so much for listening and watching this video material. I hope you had um, a great learning experience and enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Thank you so much and goodbye.